Absolutely. Half my family is Christian. It is really ironic sometimes you see that a Muslim is mandated by their faith to kill the Jews and the Christians, and it's really sometimes I kind of have to back up and look at it, and we haven't been living by our faith mandate because millions of Christians live in the Middle East, and I might point out to a lot of people sometimes that that's where Christianity started. Right. Jesus right. is from Nazareth, and Nazareth is in Palestine, right. What is known as Israel now. I come from Lebanon. Just to back up a little bit, a lot of time people would point the finger at, look what Muslims do in Saudi Arabia, look what Muslims do in Lebanon, look what Muslims do in, well, I pay taxes to the state of Oklahoma and I pay taxes to the federal government. I am a U.S. citizen, and many of us were born and raised here. We are Americans, so we have no say-so of anything that goes on in a different part of the world. A lot of those demonstrations, you see people sometimes demonstrating hatefully against Muslims gatherings, and we have signs, go back home. You know, my son would say, Lubbock, Texas. You know, I'm an OU Sooner fan. So the notion sometimes people ask us about, well, the Christians are not treated well in the Muslim world. Right. Neither are the Muslims sometimes. If you see the news right now, you'll see the Muslims themselves are trying to revoke those evil government in some instances, and trying to spread democracy and freedom and so on and so forth. If people want to tell me how Christians are treated in the Muslim country, I'm going to point out how many Muslims are in jail also as well, who love freedom, who wants freedom of speech and freedom of religion and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, sometimes the bad stories do sell. If it bleeds, it reads. Simply, we see a church being bombed, for example, in Egypt, but the second week when the Muslims would come pray right outside the church and create a human shield to protect their brothers who are the Christians, that does not make the news. Very, very little people would hear about it. Sure. The Christians live in perfect harmony with the Muslims. As a matter of fact, a story my father tells me, my father's from Jerusalem, he said, the keys for the Church of Resurrection is in a hand of a Muslim family that had that key. They open it every morning, they close it every night. And the keys for the mosque in Jerusalem is in the hand of a Christian family. And that traditionally, when the Muslims had a feud among themselves, they would bring the father to come fix the problem. And when the Christians denomination would have friction, they bring the imam to come fix the problem, because he's a neutral figure. Sure. Throughout history, you could see the history of Spain, where Muslim and Jews and Christian lived in perfect harmony. All this technology we are enjoying nowadays comes from the golden era of Spain, where Muslims and Christians and Jews lived in perfect harmony, and they produced so much technology for us that we are reaping the benefits up to this day. Is there some isolated incidents? Absolutely. Is there some isolated incidents of Muslims also being victimized in the Muslim world? Oh, plenty.
And I would even go as far to say the questions are great, and I'm sure these are questions that many people have. But again, we have to look at the narrative and the framework behind this question. And many times, for instance, we're talking about State Question 755 and anti-Sharia bans. This question comes up in a way to say, wait, Muslim countries don't respect Christianity, why should we respect Islam? And I just really think we have to sit back and look at that. I was born and raised in America. I'm an American Muslim, I'm as American can be. I mean, for me to think for 1 second that we are looking at foreign countries to determine how we apply our laws is in a way ridiculous. I mean, the United States Constitution is a beacon of light to governments around the world. Many new countries look to the United States Constitution to get an idea of how to craft something similar. And the United States Constitution has something that many of these Muslim countries don't have, and that's the Bill of Rights, and that's the First Amendment, and that's the protection to practice your religion freely. And that's something we don't have to look at foreign countries in order to understand how to apply and analyze. Many times we hear politicians such as Newt Gingrich, most famously, who will say, you know, I can't build a church in Mecca. You know, why should we allow Muslims to build a mosque in New York? And I just have to say, you know, how false is this premise to start with? I mean, since when has the United States began to look at how Saudi Arabia applies its laws in order to understand how to apply laws to its own citizens? But if we're going to dig for further roots, I mean, my parents originally are from Palestine, are from the West Bank. We come from a city that's next door neighbors to a Christian city, the Taiba. And not only do we live in harmony with Christians, but we actually respect their schools much more than our own schools. I have nephews and nieces in the West Bank that go to Christian schools. So there is a harmony there. There is a neighborly feeling. And through my visits overseas, I've been to Israel and Palestine many times. I would say the 3 best visits I have are in 3 cities that have Muslims, Jews, and Christians in it: Nazareth, Bethlehem, and Jerusalem. You find Christians and Muslims and Jews living in harmony overseas. This assumption, this blanket assumption that somehow Christians don't have the same rights as Muslims in the Muslim world is just false. We have to look at maybe there's instances that people point to, but overall, from your panelists at least, you would see that we have a history with Christians and Muslims in the same areas, in the same countries, that are afforded the same rights as any other person would have.